Thanks everyone online for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Michael Ambrosino. Latin jazz has always been an ambiguous term, a label that oversimplifies the huge and significant ways that Latin and Caribbean cultures have influenced jazz throughout its history. But often lost in that history are the brilliant musicians from the Dominican Republic who, against tall odds, have sculpted prolific careers infusing jazz with a unique cultural heritage. Doing his part to explore and shape the remarkable legacy of Afro-Dominican jazz is the celebrated pianist and band leader Josean Jacobo. Early into an already impressive career, Josean has dug deep into the architecture of Dominican music, exploring jazz through the lens of everything from bachata and merengue to Latin popular music and the sacred rhythms from the centuries-old religious traditions of palos and salve. Rhythmically acrobatic, often serving up hypnotic melodies that sound as fresh as they do familiar, Josean is one of jazz's most curious musical archaeologists. Seeking awareness and musical reconciliation, Josean's album Cimarron and his new work, Herencia, speak to the awkward but also profound cultural and political history we all share. Please welcome Josean Jacobo.
Hi, thank you, Michael. And thank you everyone for watching the show, and the Hostel Center, of course, and Greg, and everyone involved, Felix. I am very excited to share with you all this work.
So we have a wonderful trio music set coming up, and I was wondering if you could just take some time to introduce us to the musicians and then mention some of the songs that we'll be hearing.
Sure. We got Daryl Mendez on upright bass. And we have Otoniel Nicolas on the drums. We will be performing some songs from a few albums, some songs from Valsier, some songs from Cimarron, and some songs from the upcoming album Herencia. So you will hear a lot of Afro-Dominican heritage from traditional, rhythms infused with jazz colors in this powerful trio setting. So
that's wonderful.
Might hear, songs like Caña Brava, which is a very famous, popular merengue composed by Toño. So what we did is we took that song and a few other songs along with original compositions, and we, performed it in this trio setting for the audience. So I hope everyone enjoys it.
And now let's move on to a special set of music from pianist Josean Jacobo and his Afro-Dominican trio.
taste. Llévatelo, Daryl.
Wow. Just wonderful, wonderful music. That is Josean Jacobo and his Afro-Dominican trio. Josean, congratulations on filming such fantastic music in such trying times.
I know. It was pretty hard for us, because here in Santo Domingo, we have curfew like early in the afternoon. So we had like a very short time to film this. So happy with the result, you know. So thank you.
Well, I've been so looking forward to speaking with you. We have about 30 minutes to host a bunch of questions. We'll also be answering questions from our audiences on YouTube and Facebook. And so getting into it, you mentioned, in our earlier conversations that your music, your family is not that musically inclined. Your mom's an architect and your father's an
Yes.
electromechanical engineer. It makes perfect sense that you'd be a pianist, right?
I know. No, but yeah, my mother is she's an architect. So I guess the art comes from that side of the family, perhaps. My dad is an electromechanical engineer, as you mentioned it. My grandmother, though, she studied piano, classical piano, when she was young, but she had to quit for medicine school. So I did not get to see her play piano at all or something. But I do have a lot of her books from classical, music. So uh, I mean, I don't know.
And when it comes to music, I mean, a lot of musicians like yourself were influenced by a family record collection. In this case, it was your dad's, right?
Yeah, my dad, he still is. He's a music fan. He listens to a lot of music from, you know, many different genres. So back in the day when I was young, I remember that he used to sign up for musical clubs in the United States. We were living here in Santo Domingo, and he would receive catalogs every month from record labels and musical clubs all over the country. And he will, every month he will ask for CDs in that time, and a lot of them were from jazz musicians. I discovered a lot of jazz musicians from that time, and as I grew up, we would listen to many different kind of styles, and that's where I learned about Herbie Hancock, or maybe Miles Davis, and musicians like that today are, they're jazz legends. But I did not know that at that time.
But by 10, you're studying classical piano, right?
Yeah, when I was 10, I remember, walking by with my dad. Uh, we used to go to a social club, what we call social club, which is very popular here in Santo Domingo. We have a lot of social clubs. So it is like a common thing for people to become a member, and you will take your family to that social club, because that social club will have a lot of things. It will have a pool. It will have many different kind of sports that you can, do basketball, tennis, baseball. You can do a lot of things. And I remember walking by with my dad, and I saw a sign that would say, "We teach piano lessons." So when I was 10 years old, I saw that sign, and I talked to my dad right there, and I'm like, "Yo, I wish to learn the piano." And he said like, "Okay." And I remember he signed me in, and here I am today.
But what I loved hearing about was by 13, you also were playing rock guitar, but without any classes. You're doing that
Yeah,
entirely by ear. And your
exactly.
pop idols were, check this out. So you love Latin music, but your pop idols were Paula Abdul and Michael Jackson.
Well, not not really Paula Abdul, but I will listen to her. But yeah, Michael Jackson, definitely Michael Jackson. We will have CDs in my home for a lot of pop musicians and pop artists. I remember when I was a teenager, I was a fan of The Police and Sting, and I started to pick up the guitar by ear, even though I kept you know uh, doing piano and taking piano lessons, and taking classical training, playing Mozart and all that, Bach and all that stuff. But in my rebel years, my teenager life, I would go out and play in rock bands, guitar actually. And but by the time I was 18 years old, by that time I already knew I was going to be a musician. But sort of, I had an issue in my mind because as I grew up, my dad wanted me to be an engineer, just like him. So he would take me, to a lot of his work when I was not in school. He would take me with him to learn a lot about, electrical surges and all that stuff, and generators. I mean,
And you're thinking,
yeah. And I'm
when do I
thinking
get to
like,
go? When do I get to be on the
yeah,
bandstand?
yeah, I was like, already I was like, yeah, you know what, Dad, can you give me some money? I want to go get some food right across the street and stuff like that. And but I had the issue because I felt like I knew my dad wanted me to sort of go on with his legacy and become an engineer as well. So by the time my high school graduation came along, I was like, what am I gonna do? Because I
Well,
want to be a
actually, it's interesting you say that because, one of the things you mentioned is by 18, you're embracing jazz. And you said something I thought was really interesting. For you, jazz was a whole set of rules, but then you find out that there's no rules.
exactly.
What did you mean by that? And how did that affect you musically?
Well, because I was improvisation, the whole idea of improvisation and musical freedom in terms of do what you wish to do in that time, it was very appealing to me. And that's how I knew I met jazz music. And I started to listen to improvisations, and all these guys were improvising, and I was like, wow, this must feel like total freedom.
Right.
It was like a total different new concept for me, which is I found it very appealing. I was very attracted to it. In fact, and in composition in general, I when I was 11 years old, I was already making up melodies in the piano, and I would study piano, yeah, classical training and all that, but I would take some time for myself to sort of, do whatever I wanted. And that freedom, that's how jazz is started to call to me, and that's how I started to dig into jazz. And then I learned a whole lot of set of rules, that you need to do in order to do this and that. And then after a while, you take all in, and when you mature your concepts and your music, you later find out that there's actually no rules, you know.
But then by 19, you're going to the Berklee College of Music because you wanted to at least incorporate a musical framework that deals with jazz, and you're infatuated with Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. Great
Exactly.
band to be infatuated with.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Herbie Hancock was a source of inspiration for me in that term because I found his music was not so, mainstream jazz, not so traditional jazz. He will play a lot of different things, and I love that. I was like, whoa, he can do this and he can do that. And then I found out my will do as well. A lot of musicians sort of explored many different music styles and different eras over time. But what I was really interested in was in composition and in arrangements in general. So I enrolled at Berklee College of Music to study jazz composition. Was my major, and from there I started to organize my work and my ideas, and that's kind of how my project was born. It was born in school, actually.
and then,
Uh,
of course, a lot of your work is rooted in being Dominican and coming from the Dominican culture, and it's got a remarkable but complicated history, as does most of the Caribbean. And the Dominican Republic was the headquarters of the Spanish crown. And it's occupied by the Spanish, the English, and the French, and even for a time the United States. So you're dealing with a lot of cultural information here. You've talked about the colonial heritage of the Dominican culture and how it's baked into the DNA of the culture. Can you sort of unpack that a bit?
yeah, of course. So here's the thing: when I was studying at Berkeley, a lot of my friends were from many different places all over the world, and I had a lot of people from friends that were Colombia, from Venezuela, from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, and they all seem to know very well about their culture and about their folk music, you know. And I found out that I did not have that knowledge. I was like, how is it possible that I am from the Dominican Republic and I do not know about my music, my roots, my heritage, you know? uh, it's embarrassing, really. So what I did was, when I came back home, um, I started to dig, by influence of many mentors that I had, of course. I started to dig into our roots, and I found out like a whole new world. It fascinated me, and I was intrigued by how I grew up, totally apart from this. This is
Right.
so rooted in my culture, and I did not know about this. And then I found out, well, it's typical of a colonial mindset, actually,
Hmm.
because back in the day, the slaves were told that their culture, their music, their traditions were not important. Only the master's tradition are important. And it is my thesis. I feel like, as time goes by, we still have, at least in the Dominican Republic, we still have that mindset in the back of our head. So it is very common for Dominicans to sort of worship and in some sort of, in a manner of speaking, the things that are from other countries, but they do
Well,
not look deep into their own roots.
but one of the wonderful things you've done in your music is you look at those practices, those religious traditions, and you have made a practice of making music that incorporates how African traditions took on the Catholic saints
Yes,
in the tradition of Palos and Salve.
of
And
course.
so, how was that folded into your music?
So yeah, as you know, as I dig deep into my culture, I found out the syncretism that is part of my culture. If you go to all those places where they have these manifestations, you will see that there is a mix of African, beats, sort of kind of thing. Drums, come from the land. They will cut the trees and make the drums. You will have different instruments, very heavy rhythms, and very heavy conversations. The sense of community. This African heritage is very rooted. And then when you hear the chants, uh, it's like they chant to the Virgin Mary, or they sing to the saints, Saint Miguel, Saint John. Actually, the 23rd uh,
Right?
of this month is the day of the Saint John the Baptist. So in Bani, for example, there is a tradition that they would emulate the time when Saint John baptized Jesus Christ, and they make like a whole manifestation out of this act.
It,
It's
isn't it
called
like
the.
almost a festival?
It is almost
Yeah,
a festival, but
yeah,
it's like an underground festival. You know what I mean? It's like a different dimension.
right.
I mean, I find it uh, unbelievable that it exists and people do not know about this. And this
We,
is where Sarandunga is celebrated, for
right.
example.
We have a question from the audience. Could you talk a little bit about your work with the Afro-Dominican Jazz Collective?
Of course, there is a few years back in my generation, um, there's a generation of musicians that started to have this curiosity, as I have. And what we did is we got together a few band leaders, like there's like 8 band leaders, and we put together like a collective, um which is like a support group that we have to support each other, to support our music. We even play in some of our. We're all musicians, and some of us play in each with each other's group. For example, there's Hedrick Baez in La Juntiña, which Otoniel plays the drums on his group, for example. And then there's Isaac Hernandez group, which I play the piano on his group, and Otoniel also plays drums on his group. And there's also, yeah, Javier Vargas, there's Alfredo Barcacer, there's Hoshi Melo, Jonathan Pina, and there's also El Abuelo. So yeah,
A heavy band.
we got together, and everybody's sort of doing their thing on their own, but we all, champion the Afro-Dominican jazz.
So one of the things, getting back to what you were talking before about, you realize that if you were Cuban or Puerto Rican, you understood your heritage much more so than, say, musicians coming out of the Dominican Republic. And another thing that's been erased and misunderstood or misappropriated is the history of Dominican jazz. It's just not as prevalent, in the musical canon that we see here. And so, one of the things is, can you talk about some of the great big bands that you got to hear, like Papa Molina?
So yeah, of course, of course. So when I came back from Berkeley a few years later, I got the opportunity to be involved with an institution from the culture ministry in our country, which is called the Museum of the Dominican Music. And Tommy Garcia, which is the director, which is one of my mentors in my career. He has helped me so much with my career. Um, he was the one that brought me in, and I got in touch with all of these manuscripts,
Oh,
original
yeah.
manuscripts from the big bands from the 40s, from the 50s, and you have when you study this music, you see that what they did was they were very much influenced by the big bands from the United States. They were very much influenced by Duke Ellington. They were very much influenced by Count Basie, Woody Herman. They were right there, and what they would do is they would incorporate our popular music, which was merengue and a lot of boleros at that time. Boleros were very popular. Merengues, boleros, and some folkloric variations of merengue, like mangolina and stuff like that. And Papa Molina was one of the greatest conductors. He was the conductor of one of the most famous big bands at that time, which was the Orquesta San Jose, which was the orchestra that it was from the private sector, but not really, because it was financed by the government at some
Right.
point. Because what they did, they would play at the radio station, La Voz Dominicana, which the director of the radio station was Petan Trujillo. It was Trujillo's brother. So it
Uh,
was his big band, but it was sort of funded by the government as well. And then you would have the official big band from Trujillo's era, which he would use for his government propaganda, which was the Orquesta Santa Cecilia. And the conductor of this big band was Luis Alberti, which was the composer of Compadre Pedro Juan, which I interpret in this show as well. So you figure out then there's a whole new world that also people don't talk about this. There's Billo Frometa right there on the slideshow. Billo Frometa had to run away from the regime.
he went to
And
Venezuela,
he
correct?
went to Venezuela, and he founded the Billos Caracas Boys. Until this day, that orchestra is still going on, and Billo is like a hero over there in that
So
music.
I want to get to a question for the audience, but it also includes one of my questions for you. So the question from the audience is, can you tell us how you evolved as a musician? And I would add to that, you told me that by studying big bands, you took these charts that are for big bands and you would condense them down so that you could play those same melodic or rhythmic structures in a sextet or even a trio, right?
Well, I was very much influenced by their writing, their sense of melody, their sense of, comping, their sense of, because I felt like, uh, at least in the Dominican Republic, somehow I felt that today's music is so much different in terms that the melody sort of, it's like it lost his protagonism, if that's a word.
Well,
Protagonismo, it was being Spanish, like in that time the melody was the main thing. It was the most important thing of a song, and they would arrange the music in a way that they would embellish the melody so much, and you would not other things would not make noise. It would not interrupt you from getting this melody, and that is something that I learned from those charts. And I also the also another thing that I learned from those charts is the sense of structure in arrangements and the sense of using your own voice, your own rhythms, merengues, and stuff like that, and boleros, and which later on became something else. A lot of composers of that time started to involving even salve. They brought salve into the mix as well. They would call it salve, but it's not really salve because they
Right. It
would,
would.
yeah, since it was not well seen, it's part of the African heritage, so we have to cover that up. So
Code switching.
yeah, so that would
Musical code switching. So,
what
two of the musicians that you mentioned before that are such that speak to the brilliance of Dominican instrumentalists is Tavito Vasquez.
Tabito Vasquez was a genius, man.
Even in that slide, he almost looks like Charlie Parker, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Look at the way he's holding the horn, right?
Yeah, people would say that he was Charlie Parker, reincarnation. so even Paquito de Rivera came here when he was like 8 years old to play at La Voz Dominicana, and he got to meet Tabito Vasquez. And it is to my understanding that Paquito de Rivera pretty much transcribed all of Tabito's songs.
Oh, had to.
So
I mean,
so,
Paquito
yeah.
is such a legendary master himself. I would be very surprised if he didn't learn something from Vasquez. And then there was also Mario Rivera.
Mario Rivera was another one who was in the diaspora. He moved to New York, and he did a lot for our music as well from New York. He would perform in the Tito Puentes band, and he would record some stuff of his own as well, where he incorporates merengue into the jazz kind of mix. And Mario Rivera was also one of the greatest instrumentalists we had.
And multifaceted and known throughout the world for his composing and arranging. Another question, this one is from Ana Martinez. Are there any initiatives on the island promoting jazz for younger generations?
Well, not really, or at least not like I wish it would. We have a few places. Well, not right now because of the pandemic. It's kind of hard for live shows and all that. But we had some places that would, promote music. We have like the main promoter here in the Dominican Republic is called Fernando Rodriguez de Montdesert, which has his own promoting company, which is Jazz in Dominicana, and he has been promoting jazz for over 15 years or so. And before him, we had another promoter, which was Federico Aswood, which would even organize jazz festivals. And I think a Heineken Jazz Festival in that time was done here in the Dominican Republic. And we have a few jazz festivals. Well, the most important jazz festival right now here in the Dominican Republic is one in Cabarete, which is the Dominican Republic Jazz Festival. Fedu Jazz is actually an organization which is doing a lot of good to the kids in the north side of the country, and teaching them music, and they also organize the jazz festival there. And there is another jazz festival here in Santo Domingo, which is called the Santo Domingo Jazz Festival in Casa de Teatro, which also promotes jazz music as well,
Well, so we've kind of dabbled as briefly as we can in terms of colonization and how it affects culture and music. Let's talk about the decolonization of the musical mind. So you started learning about your culture, obviously at home and through your own community, but also by reading people like J.M. Cooper-Smith from the Smithsonian.
Yeah, Cooper-Smith was, he would come in the 40s, like in 1947. I have that recording actually. And he would come here in a project financed by the Smithsonian Museum in the United States. And he would go out there to all those manifestations and, with a recording machine. And he would record all these manifestations, and he wrote a book about it. And the book comes with a recording as well, so you would hear all those recording. And I remember that I would compare those recordings with what I've seen and what I've heard, up front, face to face. And I can tell you that, those traditions are very much alive. They're pretty much the same right now, some variations, because the problem with traditional music like that, from the oral uh, kind of thing, is that it passes on from generation to generation. It is not taught in school. You would not go to school to learn sarandunga or
Well,
to learn palo. You know what I
it'll
mean?
it'll be taught in the school that you develop soon after we
Well,
get enough money
I
to get you to
hope.
start it. John Santos talks about this. John Santos, the master percussionist on the West
Yes,
Coast who lives in Oakland, talks about the elasticity of the drum and the historical resonance of how rhythms have traveled all over the world. And you mentioned an example of that is bambula, and how it's
bambula,
gone
yes.
everywhere from the Caribbean to being one of the foundations of jazz in New Orleans.
Of course, and it is also present in different countries where they would have French colonization in their history. I know of New Orleans because I've heard bambula over there. Well, I've never been to New Orleans, but I've heard bambula from New Orleans, and I compare it to the bambula that we hear here in Samana, which is on the north side of the country, and it's pretty much the same thing.
It's you said this before, is that as you dove deeper into your American roots and you started looking at the rhythmic traditions of the Caribbean, you said we are all really from the same place.
Exactly. It's like there's a seed that was planted here, and it spread it all across the. I mean, it spread it all across the continent, man, and you can
But
perceive it many places. If you dig deep into the roots and you compare it to, let's say, Colombia's roots, for example, and you say, wow, man, there's a lot of similarities. It's pretty much the same almost. It's like the same people traveled everywhere and taught everybody how to do something. It's amazing. I find it amazing. And the more you dig into the past, the more amazed you become with what you find. There's a lot of different manifestations here in the Dominican Republic, and most of them I do not know yet, because it's a whole new world. There's a lot of things to investigate and to see and to go out there and look. It's a part of me that I wish to do. I wish to go out more and find new manifestations. There's a lot of manifestation that I've heard of. People here have been talking about, and I have not been able to visit those yet. I
so, but
wish.
but as a young man, ironically, you're going backwards to roots, but you're also going forward to pop musicians like Jose de Luc. And the Hostos
Yes.
Center just did a virtual concert of his music. And you speak very passionately about Dominican popular musicians, folkloric musicians who gave birth to another creative side of you. What was that about?
Well, before my generation, there was another generation which had to struggle even more with society to to be, to their voice to be heard. This is who we are. This is our music. This is our culture. This is our rhythmics. This is who we are. You need to listen. That's what they did, and they received a lot of bad treatments because of it. Jose Luluc is one of those. He was actually one of my mentors as well in terms of music. He would teach me all the rhythms, all the patterns from the drums. He would say, "Here's a drum. Here's what you will play." Because in the folkloric music here in the Dominican Republic, as well as a lot of different places, the ensemble of the drums is what makes the music. Because you would have, let's say, three drums, and one of the drums would do one pattern, and another one would do another pattern, and then the other one would do, the improvisation, or another pattern or something. And Duluc would give me a drum, and he would say, "You play this," and then he would take the lead drum, and then he would give another drum to another guy, and he was, "You do this." And the ensemble of us is what makes the rhythm. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is the most jazz thing I've heard,
Right.
because we share the same origins, we share the same connection, the sense of community, the sense of, sharing. You play this, and I play with you, and I improvise over that, and and then there's a melody, we sing, and it's amazing, and there's
We,
people
we,
dancing.
we just got a great comment that said, so awesome, DeLuc and Josean, what a concert that would be like.
Well, it has happened before, trust
No,
me.
seriously.
I used to play with him with his Guerreros del Fuego back in the day. Yeah, it has
So
happened before.
Max in our audience would like to know, what do you think Dominican jazz needs right now to flourish? And is the Dominican Museum of Music open to the public?
Okay, we are all the things from, first of all, the Dominican Museum. We have all of these manuscripts, and kept in vault right now in the archives, the National Archives. The house which the Ministry of Culture has given to us right now is being reconstructed. So when that job is done, we will take over the house, and then we will set up for the public. So I figured it will be very soon. It will be very soon, and I hope it's sooner than I think. Another thing is about what jazz musicians need to do in the Dominican Republic in terms, to be better, to be more developed. Well, I think we need a lot of support. First of all, we need support. We need places to play. We need people to go to the shows, with which they do. We need institutions from the private sector and the public sector that should believe in our work, should invest in our work. And also, we need to have more musicians more committed to this. Because I find that there's a lot of musicians that they might be committed to this, but maybe they do not know the way. They need to understand more about the business side of music, because
Right.
it is as important as music itself. You need both sides in order for you to make it in the music industry. So you need to train yourself, because nobody here teaches you how to do that. I had to find that on my own, and I'm
Even after
still
going to
learning.
Berkeley.
Yeah, even after
Um,
going to Berkeley, because I did not take that class at Berkeley. I was a jazz composition major. You know what I mean? I did not know nothing about business, or how to sell your music, or this and that. You need to learn for yourself and see what is it that you have to do in order for you to reach to new audience, to reach to new people, to sell your music in order for you to make a living. Because if you do not figure out a way to make a living, then you will end up either frustrated, or quitting music and doing something else,
which
or
is
maybe doing something to please maybe a restaurant, which I see every day here in Santo Domingo. I see a lot of musicians that just play on groups just to entertain others in restaurants so they could eat.
and COVID is making it worse for everyone. So we're going to
Oh,
skip. I want to skip through two slides because, as I expected, there's so much to cover, and we're sort of a little late on time. So Tone and Luis Diaz were two other musical influences, and also you were talking about there's younger musicians. Well, not young anymore, but I think how do you pronounce her name? Xiomara.
Xiomara Fortuna,
Xiomara.
yeah.
She's
Xiomara, yeah.
amazing. And Juan Luis, who I think it was in 2009, he got 7 Latin Grammys awards. So again, there's this rich cultural tradition within the Dominican Republic that people need to know more about. But back to jazz, because jazz is in the title there. You've been influenced by people like John Coltrane and other jazz legends.
Yeah, I love him.
You said his spiritual music was especially important to you.
Yes, I feel very, very identified with John Coltrane's spiritual era, his album Crescent, for example. All that A Love Supreme kind of deal, that music that reaches deep into your soul, into my mind. It's like it speaks for me. It's like I tell this every day to my colleagues, and I say, John Coltrane speaks to me, man, even in death. I hear his music, and I find it so amazing. How is it possible for you to write such complicated harmonies, and on top of that, you will write such an incredible melody that will identify to the public, that will make their spirit, vibrate. You know what I mean? And I feel a lot of identify. I feel very identified, very appealed to that. Um, I think
Can
for
you talk about
myself,
that for a second? Because one of the things that Crescent did really well was people who never listened to jazz before loved that album. So are you trying to create music that has a more universal appeal then?
of course, Bill Evans would say something like, "We all have a universal mindset, and universal mind. And when we perform live, my universal mind communicates with your universal mind. And in the end, those universal minds speak to each other. And that's where, those are my words from now on. That's where the magic comes in. So that's pretty much what I feel when I hear to John Coltrane's Spiritual Era. That's pretty much what I want to, provoke in others, in other listeners that will listen to my music. Not just, it's not, because it's not just about me. It's not about the piano. It's not about my music. It's not just about the Dominican culture, even though it is in part, but raise awareness of the Dominican culture and mix it with jazz and maybe claim a space there. But also it's about sharing, it's about sharing our culture. It's about telling the world that we can all, share our stuff and understand each other and communicate our universal minds,
That goes back to this whole idea of decolonizing the music.
Of course.
Breaking down the structures, breaking down the, we even say this in jazz, that jazz is too industrialized. The genres make no sense. As you were playing, you kind of got up from your piano, you're dancing a little bit. And I thought, that's Keith Jarrett. You're like dancing. So Keith must be one of your influences. And then you also do something that Brad Meldar does very well, which is to use a classical sensibility, but the creative mindset of a jazz musician.
Brad is also a big influence of mine. I love him.
You talked about not enough musicians are telling the story. And let's talk about that, because I listen obviously to a lot of Latin jazz, a lot of Pan-Latin jazz, and there's this idea of heritage. Musicians like Miguel Zenon, David Sanchez, Daniela Perez, they all are doing what you're doing, diving into the history of their heritage and making world-class music from it. Clearly, they must be influences for you.
They are my musical heroes, man. I remember as I studied at Berkeley, I discovered David Sanchez and Danilo Perez and Miguel Soñón's music and what they were doing with their culture. And not just that, because they added also the spiritual part of what I was telling you about, that I see in John Coltrane, for example, that I hear in his music. You can sense the spiritual part of the music as well. And I was thinking like, wow, this is kind of what I want to do as well with my country, with my music, And these are the guys that have kept me going, seeing their trajectory, what they've done, all the work, all the investigation that they've been doing, and the level that they have been doing it in such a way that, it's like, man, I need to develop my own language, my own culture, my own music, so that I can, communicate that to the audience.
And your own story.
Culture, in my own story, exactly.
And your own story, because David Sanchez, his latest album was very much about his personal journey in the last couple of years. He recently lost his wife, but he's going back to the Caribbean, back to Puerto Rico. And in the music, you can hear the story of his homeland. So I'm curious, when you're walking in Santo Domingo, do you have a T-shirt that says "Got Musical Archaeologist" and on the back it's got your website? I mean, because you talk about storytelling, and that's something you do. You are like one of the storytellers. And I'm curious, when I look at your album Cimarron, was that one of the frameworks for that recording?
Cimarron was actually when I got behind the concept of my music. Before Cimarron, I did Balsier, which incorporates a lot of folkloric rhythms and stuff, but I had not organized it enough at that time. when I recorded Cimarron, I got to the point where I started to organize, put the pieces together to make a story, to the storytelling, like you're saying, because Cimarron was actually the names that the master will tell to the slaves that they would got away. When they escaped, they were negro cimarron.
Right.
You know, they were not from you know. So what they did was they took refuge in the mountains, and those refuges were called El Maniel, which is a song that I have in Cimarron. And El Maniel was their refuge, and they would make societies with what the customs and the tradition that they brought from Africa, and they mix it with what they learned from their masters. So that's the genesis right there of the Dominican culture, you know? It's a mix of cultures. The Tainos were there with them, but we do not know at this point musically what is Taino and what is not, you know, because the Tainos were exterminated. But
all throughout the Caribbean.
Exactly. So, but that is the genesis of the Dominican culture, and that was the story that I wanted to tell in Cimarron. Even Mind Reset was, you know, if you pay attention to the first track of the album, it's Mind Reset, and Mind Reset, the word mind reset, what it invites you is to free your mind from prejudice. I'm going to tell you a story, but in order for me to tell you this story, you need to free your mind from all prejudices that you may have, from all judgment, from everything. You have to free your soul. You have to get rid of everything you think you've learned and be open to new things. And this is what Cimarron is all about.
I think you just answered the next question. You're prescient. You read my mind. The answer is, who is Josean Jacobo right now? And, you know, I think that's very much what I see your music being. And I know that you've been living through a pandemic, and playing live has been something you can't do. So I want to spend the last couple of minutes to talk about, first I had a question. So this is a picture from your one of your live performances, and you're playing something. If you could quickly, can you see that picture? What are you playing?
Well, in my right hand, the thing I'm blowing is called a bamboo, which is a fututo. This is performed in a manifestation that is called Gaga, which the last song that we played on the show, Bate comes. It's based on this rhythm, on Gaga. Gaga is a tradition that came from Haiti, actually.
Right.
And Bate is the name of the last song that I played. Bate is a Taino word that they would use for a place where they will meet and they will play ball, you know? And that place, it evolved into something right now where Bate is where they work the sugar cane here in the Dominican Republic. And all across the country, the people that work in the Bate, that the people that will cut the sugar cane and work the sugar cane are from Haiti. And what they did is they brought their Gaga with them, which they call him Rara, Gaga, you know? And they would bring in Gaga, and this is something that they would use. They would use like a whole section, like think of it like as a big band, man. This is a big band. And you will see a section of just fututos from different construction materials. This is made out of bamboo, but there are some made of metal, which is called cornets, and there are some made of PVC plastic, you know, and they would join them together, and they would give different notes, and they would communicate. It's like, wow. And you would have like a heavy rhythm section, you know, on top of that, and they would move. It's not static. It's not like you will go to a place and you will see a guy, you will stay there. No, they stand up, man. They move. They keep walking, playing, and everybody's following them, and everybody's playing these fututos. And what I hold in my hand made of metal is a cha-cha, which is like a maraca made out of metal, and it will go cha-cha, 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 cha-cha. It's pretty amazing, man.
I can hear you putting this already together. So it's so funny because it's almost as if you see this in steel drums, you see this in the inventiveness of Afro-Caribbean cultures that made something from nothing and created musical traditions that have spread all over the world and influence everything. You hear this in rap, you hear this in R&B. So let's talk about latest album, Herencia. And you said it's not just the heritage of the Dominican Republic, but also what the world needs to know about this heritage.
Yeah, this is a new concept that I'm trying to bring in, talking about, you know, the deconstruction of the colonial mindset. This is a new concept that I want to bring into this album, which is about the heritage that we received from, you know, our ancestors. But also, I figure out that we have gotten to the point where the world pretty much knows the Dominican Republic from bachata and merengue. Like if you go anywhere in the world and I would say, you know, I'm from the Dominican Republic, they will probably mention either bachata or merengue. I think bachata even more right now. But a few years back, it was merengue, you know, so they know our country from that. So it's about the heritage we got from our ancestors, but also about the heritage that we are giving to the world. Because the world has pretty much adopted bachata, man. In Brazil, they are crazy about bachata right now. If you go to Europe, you would see so many academies that they would teach you how to dance bachata. It's unbelievable, really. It's amazing.
And if it was up to me, and I'm speaking to everyone in the audience, the world needs to adopt the music of Josean Jacobo. And if you would like to adopt it and purchase it for your collection, there is this album Balsé, and you recorded a while ago. And then there's also Cimarron. You can find these both at Amazon and iTunes. Also, you can go to Josean's website, which is gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you.
And you can, there it is. It's joseanjacobo.com.
It's actually Josean Jacobo, J-A.
Jacobo, excuse me.
Sorry, it's okay. It's okay.
You can find all of his music there and any updated information and keep in touch with all the work he's doing. And, you know, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm sorry that we ran out of time. There's so much we could talk about this. I wish we had twice the amount of time. Thank you all for your comments and questions. Thanks to everyone in the entire production staff at Hostos and the Center for Arts and Culture. And of course, a very special thanks for Josean Jacobo and his marvelous trio. Just a fantastic performance. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank you, Michael, and I would like to thank the Hostos Center, Felix and Greg and everyone. You've been wonderful. And, you know, I want to also thank Armando Gonzalez for the mixing and the mastering. I want to thank Alex Brower for, you know, the recording session. I want to thank Samuel Hogan for the video, Hedrick Baez for the video. I want to thank my brothers, man, Otoniel and Daryl. They are my brothers for real, from different mothers, you know, and you've been wonderful. And the audience, thank you for joining us and watching this show. Thank you.
Well, we know you have a bright future. You know, Godspeed to you. Can't wait to see what the new album looks like. And I'm Michael Ambrosino. I'm the host of the jazz program Currents and the jazz audio documentary series Dialogues. You can hear them both at 33third.org. And make sure you stay tuned to Hostos Center for the Arts and Culture as the spring series, or now it's into summer, continues to unfold with many wonderful events. And you can find out more information. Just go to hostoscenter.org. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.